Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday. Hey, that's right. Okay. It's Friday, August 28th, 2020. I was trying to remember, what do we do at this point? Yes, we tell everybody what the date is, even though likely you already know, but somehow this helps identify the show. We don't do it again later on at any point, so we never are able to actually warn people off if it is a rerun that's coming up. Although I guess we don't really want to warn people off of the reruns anyway, so I don't really know what we do that for. But this is to acknowledge, it's like a hostage video, to acknowledge that we're alive and haven't yet been overtaken by the coronavirus, like everyone was last night at the White House, the killing fields of the White House. Yes, super spreader event held there yesterday. One of many topics I believe we can touch on today. We may have the field wide open today. As our usual Friday summer guest, Ian Reifowitz, is not with us today. It's his vacation week, so wishing you well. Hope you're enjoying your visit. I think he's got a family visit going on there. So hope you're having a great day, hanging out. Maybe you're maybe you're asleep. I don't know. Maybe you're at breakfast, having a great time with family visiting. You're probably up and making some breakfast, or going out for some breakfast, or having some breakfast delivered to you because you're afraid to eat inside a restaurant. I don't know. Anyway, big weekend coming up here. Make sure if you are going out to eat, you can go and get your outdoor dining experience before Hurricane Laura's remnants arrive in our area. This hurricane, it's been predicted for a couple of days this way. It's just taking this weird turn. It kind of came in, as we know, off of the Gulf through Louisiana, and I guess some of Texas affected as well, because the president has announced he's going to go and visit Louisiana and Texas to survey the damage. And now we know when he's going to do it. He didn't know when he was going to do it last night when he said he was going. Now, normally something like this would be very tightly scheduled because, there are a lot of logistics to work out. But he didn't know when he was going. We'll talk about why that's the case. I did talk about it in the Morning Post today over at Daily Coast, if you had a chance to see that. If not, I can explain. But yes, Ian, make sure you get your visit in with your family if you're going out to breakfast to eat outdoors, because reasons. Oh yes, right. The remnants of Laura come through. It's taking this weird turn, having come up through Louisiana and Texas, and then it's kind of go to like Kentucky or so, and then I guess it's a little further west than that. I'll look at the maps, which is another story I wanted to bring up to your attention. The maps, right. Anyway, comes up from the Gulf Coast and then takes this weird right at about, let's see, we'll look at the map. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe the western reaches of Kentucky and Tennessee, and then just sort of turns to the right and rolls eastward over the rest of Kentucky. I guess the whole of Kentucky gets covered. West Virginia, D.C. area. And I don't know if it reaches up, if it continues on a northward slide as well to rain on New York. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe the president is going to check. He said last night that he was going to visit the hard-hit areas of Louisiana and Texas. But he wasn't sure when he was going to go. Everybody else wants to know, well, when's he coming, and what do we have to do to prepare, and do we need police, and are we going to not pay for them because Trump will not reimburse us for the visit? All those things that everyone gets used to now. Whenever he visits, it costs everybody else money. Anyway, he couldn't pinpoint whether he was going to go Saturday or Sunday, and it wasn't because the details were still being worked out. It was because, he wants to know when it's going to rain in D.C. so that he can play golf on the other day. I'll either visit Saturday or Sunday. You need to get ready. You tell me. You let me know from on the ground when the best time to arrive is. But rather, if it's going to rain in D.C. on Saturday and I can't play golf, then I'll visit you on Saturday. And then when it clears up on Sunday, I'll go play golf. Of course, I should check the weather for Bedminster. He could always go and play golf there if Laura's remnants aren't going to make it all the way up that far north. Maybe that could change the schedule just to mix things up. But, yeah, be sure that he will be mixing his attempt at being empathetic by showing up to say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry about all of this stuff. Let me throw some paper towels at you with, I don't care, now watch this drive. Except don't watch this drive because you're not allowed to. Except from a kayak on the river next to my golf course. From there, you're able to see me play. All right, so that's what's coming up for Trump for the weekend. As you may know, he finished up the Republican National Convention on the grounds of the White House, giving his speech, his super spreader speech, on the South Lawn. I don't know, everybody on TV, unprecedented, or we've never thought I'd see this, or broke all the rules, and he just broke the mold. He's such a maverick. Yeah, totally illegal. Yeah, you can't enforce the Hatch Act against anybody if the executive branch doesn't want to do that. And yeah, the president has a certain good faith exemption from the Hatch Act. And yeah, they've expanded the exemption to cover bad faith as well because Donald Trump is president. And no, they didn't change the law at any point. And no, it won't be applicable to any future president, maybe even Republican as well as Democrat. As soon as there's any sort of blurring of the lines, Republicans will be screaming. Ironically, they'll be screaming, we should impeach the Democratic president who does this, because Democrats were screaming that we ought to have impeached Trump for it. And though we didn't impeach Trump for it, the point is that Democrats are hypocrites if they don't now want to impeach Democrats for it. You see how this is going to work. All right. So the weather map led me to another story of some interest. As you know, we follow the global pandemic that has come to call the United States its new home, the coronavirus pandemic. And as you know, I document these things to some extent on my Twitter feed because I didn't know where else to put them, essentially. But I like to watch the Worldometers numbers for the total number of cases in various locations around the country and around the world, both the U.S. states and foreign countries, and try and figure out where is the virus on the rise, where is it waning, how bad is it, et cetera, what percentage of the population is getting it, because that too becomes important. We'll see if we can turn around and get back to that later on, why. But, so I follow new cases, and then I started to try and calculate, because people asked for it, criticized the idea that you would just simply offer the raw numbers of new cases by country or by state without normalizing the numbers. And I certainly understand the interest in getting those normalized numbers. They do tell you something interesting and different. It's just that Worldometers doesn't offer them, and so you have to do the calculations by yourself. Asparagus Zucchini, of course, the other day offered up a solution, saying he could actually program things such that it, not using Worldometers data, which I understand, I guess, is more difficult to, I don't know what's the terminology for it, more difficult to collate, to scrape and reuse in whatever application he was using to do the calculations. Although I really do like to keep it to, Worldometers. I don't know how much trouble that causes or not. But he offered up some solution, but it was to me, it was so, I don't know, programmer-centric, I guess. I didn't know what I'm saying is, he knows what he's doing, and I had no idea what the hell he was doing. And he's like, oh, well, here's the code for it. I'm like, well, what do I do with this? I'm going to go out in the street and read it aloud and see if any websites pop up. I don't know what to do with it. I'm that, lost on that. And I know that wouldn't occur to you. If you know what you're doing on something like that and you hand somebody the code, and you're like, well, of course, I don't need to do anything. It would be like it's a rough equivalent of standing in front of a store and being like, well, I don't understand. They said they had this product. I looked them up online, and now I can't find the product. And the store clerk will come out and say, well, you see this here on the door? Yeah. It says push. Yeah. I mean, I can see that it says push. So I read it out loud. Well, if you push the door, you'll be able to go through and come inside and find the shelf that has the item, and then you'll be able to buy it. Oh, you didn't tell me that. I'm not very tech savvy. It's a door, sir. I mean, you don't have to be tech savvy. Well, okay, that's true. But if you're an alien from another planet and you're used to beaming places, you don't know that you're. I don't know. I don't know if I can come up with an excuse for how you can't understand a door. Well, actually, I have one. But okay, I don't really, never mind that story. Maybe, if anyone remembers that I balked at this story, one day you'll be able to coax it out of me. Anyway, so I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, basically. He offered something that pointed to data that I was able to look at one day. Oh, also, the source he was using for the data, I think they didn't have an updated set of data for the particular day. They had the previous day. So I was able to verify at least, well, your results from your programming here tell me, they give me results largely similar to what I got. And the difference being that your data came from somewhere else and mine came from Worldometers. And so that probably explains it, but it largely followed the same pattern. After that, I was like, well, if I open this email every day, is it going to have different numbers in it? I don't know what the hell's going on. He's probably already answered me by now. And is sighing. Okay, I'm sending the latest update, he says, via email. Okay, so the thing is, so now that means that I have to get that email every night at like 10 o'clock when Worldometers stops collecting all of their data and figures it all in. And then, Anyway, the point is, I don't know what I'm talking about, and maybe one day I'll work it out with asparagus, zucchini, and I'll have all this stuff. And I won't have to. I end up staying up late, midnight, and it's like, I forgot to do those charts. And it's one thing when you're just pulling the data off of the charts because you can resort it on Worldometers. It's another when, now it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I got a calculator out, and I'm trying to figure out the normalized version of them. But sometimes it's actually instructive to do the calculation yourself, and you get a real feel for the numbers. Now, this is what the other stories that emerge from the numbers are, that you get a sense of where it's hot and where it's not. And so what do I tweet out? The things that you get from Worldometers, the number of total number of cases, total number of deaths, the deaths per million in population, the cases per population, by population, and then new cases for the day. And then I started tracking, I mentioned this the other day, active cases, which I think is also important. How many people you actually have to worry about who have the virus right now? Well, anyway, one of the things that emerged from yesterday that I just saw as I was reviewing my responses in Twitter, let me go get it because it was pointed out. It was a great point. One of the things I noticed last night is the Sturgis motorcycle rally is coming home to roost, not only in South Dakota where they held it, but all over the place where, of course, people came from. And we knew that was the case, and we read the story the other day that they had 128 or something like that cases that they had traced to the Sturgis rally over 8 states. They had lots of outbreaks all over the place. And so I was like, well, geez, nothing to see here. Who would have guessed, I tweeted last night, that Sturgis would set South Dakota on fire. And I found this in the category I was making up and doing the calculations for, new cases of COVID-19 per 1 million in population. And South Dakota has been on the list and rising for a while. And originally, it was even before Sturgis, it occasionally popped up on the list, or the various lists, because of the meat packing industry that was based there, and those clusters that activity caused. But this time they've been creeping up slowly up the list, and then they not only topped the list of new cases per million in population yesterday, but I mean almost twice any other number on the list. And here's how the figures come out. I would say the normal high end of the range of how many new cases did you get per million in population is in the 200s. 200 and up is the high end. So 200 out of every million people showed up as a new case yesterday in most states. South Dakota topped 700 in cases from yesterday. They actually, and because South Dakota is one of those small states where the population is actually just under a million, what that means is I think the number was 683 new cases yesterday in South Dakota. So per million, well, it's a little over 683. The math, it works out to 704. But here's the list. South Dakota, 704 cases per million new yesterday. Iowa, 496 per million. And then, okay, North Dakota, well done. North Dakota is going to border South Dakota, right? That made sense to me. 437 per million. But of course I wondered, they say all these Sturgis riders came from all over the place, so it's hard to tell just from the state, but, whether they're in, where did they go to? But okay. Next up, 361 per million was Alabama. Well, they don't border South Dakota. Tennessee, 267. But you also get the pattern of red state, blue state here. South Dakota, Iowa, North Dakota, Alabama. Tennessee, 267. Missouri, 263. Arkansas, 239. Georgia, 234. Anomalous, number 9, Hawaii, 216. I think we can promise you that nobody rode their motorcycle from Hawaii to South Dakota and back. It's entirely possible that somebody might ship a motorcycle from Hawaii to California and then ride from who knows. But that's not what happened. It's not a Sturgis thing. But it is part of a larger global pattern. The hottest hot spots for growth are island nations, it turns out. And I don't know whether that's because there's nowhere to escape to or what. Once the virus is there and people, there's a limited amount of places you can go to get away from the virus, but that I've noticed. And then number 10, anomalous in this sense, I have not seen them on this or any list. Not the numbers of deaths, not the new deaths, not the active cases, not the, new cases, nothing. Just sort of, they've got the virus. They're just sort of hanging out comfortably in the middle of the pack until yesterday. Minnesota, 205 cases per million. No cause for alarm, just, okay, maybe it's your turn on the bottom of the top 10 list. And then, John Day Apgar on Twitter noticed and pointed out, I had said, well, gee whiz, who would have guessed that Sturgis would set South Dakota on fire? And also, just before finally giving up and going to bed for the night, I noticed, nothing to see here in South Dakota. I noticed, what was the timing on this, right? Well, it's closing in now on 2 weeks since Sturgis ended, which means you would be checking for this and trying to find out if alarm bells were ringing. I believe it ended on the 16th. Sunday, the 16th of August was the last day. It started on the 7th of August. So really, you could start your clock around the 7th and look for 2 weeks. And then for late arrivals or for people departing to go back to their states and get sick, the August 16th. So this Sunday will be 2 weeks. So what's going on? As I mentioned, they were at the top of my list of new cases per million. For total cases, their numbers have now gone north of 10,000. They were underneath the 10,000 mark for a long time. They're now over 12,000. 623 new cases in South Dakota is a big, big deal for a state with a population of less than 1 million. But on top of that, there was also what I mentioned, their new cases per million, and the crazy figure it gave you on how far ahead they were of other states. And then I showed the daily new cases chart, the bar chart of daily new cases in South Dakota. And I think their previous high had been, I don't have the actual chart open. I have the picture of the chart open. We'll go take a look at what's going on in South Dakota. But anyway, the bar chart shows the story. The 623 day at the end of the bar chart is like this crazy looking anomaly. They've had 2 days in this whole pandemic where they had more than 200 cases, new cases per day. May 8th and May 9th, they had 239 and 249 cases. And that was, I think, the big meat packing spike. And then they had an August 22nd report of 251 cases. And I think that was probably the people who had arrived on August 7th to kick off the Sturgis rally. By August 22nd, they were sick, but then the numbers started to go down. So 251 on August 22nd, 141 on the 23rd, 149 on the 24th, 80 cases on the 25th, 66 cases on the 26th. Those sound like the weekend testing dates when people, either the testing centers were closed or people weren't reporting the numbers. August 27th, 623. That's 3 times or more the previous record in South Dakota. That may be a single day spike. It could be sustained. I don't know. But as I mentioned, the place is on fire. And then, as John observed, I got to get back to it here. So weird, not only, as I'm saying, so weird that Sturgis would have this motorcycle rally and everybody descends on it, and 2 weeks later, South Dakota is on fire. So weird that the other states in the top 3 are states that border the state where Sturgis happened. Right, true. I certainly noticed North Dakota, but what I didn't notice was that right in the middle there, between South Dakota and North Dakota on the list is Iowa. And, I wasn't thinking about the map out there, but yes, South Dakota borders, a number of states, and Iowa is one of them as well. All of them, if we go around the counterclockwise, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota. Minnesota, that weird other anomaly at number 10. So Sturgis and its neighbors account for 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the top 10 states. And then I was kind of looking around at, I don't think that they've had a huge problem in spike, and certainly not in Wyoming. I mean, Wyoming just doesn't have enough people. Even if the whole population of Wyoming went to Sturgis and emptied the entirety of Wyoming and then went back, you're just not going to generate this kinds of numbers. Even when you normalize them, because not everybody went, they're not really likely to peak up there. But Montana's numbers were a little bit elevated too. I didn't look at Nebraska's numbers, and I guess I should take a peek, while we're on the subject. But what can I tell you? It was a super spreader event, and we're going to see the results of that, not only in the states that border South Dakota, but, further across the country. People crossed several states to go and attend. It doesn't look like a huge emergency. Nebraska had some real problems early on in April and May when they had, I think their peak day was 641 back on May 8th, and they're sitting at about, they've had two big days in a row, 379 and 374 cases. And what kind of population are we looking at there in Nebraska? Let's just check that. Not a huge population, 1.9 million. So that's a significant number of new cases. They wouldn't make the top 10 list, but Sturgis is doing it. And now the White House is doing it. We all watched, at least watched Twitter watching the speech, which by all accounts was a snooze fest for Democrats, certainly. I don't know whether Republicans found it exciting or not, but I don't think there wasn't even any new interesting conspiracy theories launched yesterday. So the talk of the town was rightly the fact that they were claiming somewhere like in the neighborhood of 1,500 people. They put them shoulder to shoulder in seats. It was looked like a conscious effort to avoid social distancing and masking. Rudy Giuliani was there, and I believe he gave a speech, but the speech was taped. So I thought I saw somebody mention that on Twitter, so that was kind of weird. He was caught on video mopping his brow furiously. It was stifling last night outside. So he was mopping his brow and then wiping his sweat on whoever it was, his companion. I don't know who he goes with these days to events like this. So that was kind of gross. And probably one of the funnier descriptions of how badly his sweat was pouring off of him was, I wish I could remember who said it. But not somebody who I'm familiar with, but saying, how did he put it? He's sweating like a basement toilet. That was fantastic. No, I mean, that was a true laugh out loud moment, as you just heard. So I would pocket that one. Use that again. Sweating like a basement toilet. I will scroll around and see if I can't find that place. Now, that brings us to one other point I guess we have to raise about the craziness of holding this event the way they did. The evening was topped off, for me, by a report from Jim Acosta, who somebody caught and on the video and tweeted this one around. Really rather remarkable. On the lack of social distancing or face masks at Trump's acceptance speech on the friggin' White House lawn, which was killing everybody. Literally, I guess, is a White House official who tells Jim Acosta, we're not really all that concerned about this anymore because everybody's going to catch this thing eventually. That's the new line on things from the White House. You're all doomed anyway, so what the F? We'll just do it this way. What an evolution. It's going to 15 cases and soon it'll be 0. Everybody's going to get this eventually. They're totally giving up. Mass murder on the White House lawn. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yes, so that probably struck you the way it struck me if you happened to see it last night, but that's pretty incredible. Jim Acosta, again, reflecting, and who knows? I don't know who this White House official was and the whole dumb system of trying to keep them anonymous, whatever. What a statement. I'd love to know who said it and why. It did strike me that it was possible that they had some plan to say that and then have Jim Acosta report it and then deny it and say, look how fake this stupid fake news guy is. Whatever. I don't know. But that's a long walk to just, why don't they just go out there and just say the press is a bunch of liars and we hate them, and everyone would be fine with that. They don't really have to choreograph a real huge story. So maybe it's true. They really do think this. I was also plotting this other evolution of their points. As I mentioned, there was that initial response. Apparently it was February 26th when Trump himself was making the case. Well, there are 15 cases in the country. By the way, we're over 6 million cases now, in case you didn't know. But anyway, it's really? Okay. Well, Scott tells me we have maybe some microphone issues and the volume is going up and down. I don't think I haven't adjusted anything, but okay, we seem to be okay now. So anyway, the bad news is the president, of course, back on February 26th says you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple days is going to be down close to 0, but which I mean 6 million, give or take. So that didn't happen, and we all know that was incredibly stupid. And I was reminded the other day by what? I can't remember. All right. Well, maybe I'll stumble upon it later. But anyway, I was reminded. I hadn't really forgotten, but I hadn't thought about it in a long time. Just how incredibly, monumentally stupid and dangerous it was for him early on in the pandemic. Remember when he was saying we should be open for Easter and we should pack the churches? I mean, we all remember because it was such a crazy thing to say at the time, but it's been overwhelmed by so many other crazy things just on what he says about he himself says about the coronavirus pandemic has been overwhelmed by other crazy or even stupider things. But that struck me as particularly egregious and that we had almost forgotten about the fact that in early April, he was like, this is over and we should all go to church. And not that he was going. Anyway, by late April, 29th, was when I guess the other milestone comment from the administration for me was Jared Kushner's announcement that, what did he say? The federal government rose to the challenge and this is a great success story. And then, of course, I marked we were at about 60,000 dead at that particular moment. And we have, of course, double that number, more than double that number, dead since he said it was a great success and everybody ought to be saying so. We're over 180,000 today. We will hit, according to Worldometers, we're going to easily pass. In this morning, I would think, we will pass 185,000 dead. Still on track to hit 200,000 on or about September 11th. And possibly 250,000 by the time Election Day rolls around. And just letting you know, we're still on track for that. Great news. And anyway, yeah. So at February 26th, he says 15 cases, and it's going down to 0. April 29th, was it, that Kushner says it's a great success story. I should have followed along a 2-month pattern. Late February, late April. Should have found a June. I didn't. I can't think of anything. Well, but I guess you could poke around. There's probably something. Clearly, there's something stupid and overly optimistic. But then by August 27th, the new line from the administration is, we give up. The whole country's going to catch this thing eventually. That's the line. We didn't do the social distancing. We didn't ask for masks. It's all over. Everybody is going to catch this thing eventually. Well, I guess I sort of thought that might have been the case early on, but I didn't then know how effective the lockdowns and distancing could be, at least in other countries. But we never bothered to actually implement that here, and so obviously that wasn't going to be effective. So that's the new line. It's either going to be 0 or a great success story or catastrophic failure. Everybody's going to get it, but it's not our fault. Somehow it's Obama and whatever, or it's not so bad and everybody should catch it, and we're back to having chicken pox parties as a solution. So there you go. Bottom line, the United States cannot emerge from this pandemic while Donald Trump is alive. Even if he's voted out of office, he will spend his time out of office doing everything he can to undermine any efforts to suppress the virus. And it's one or the other. The population of the United States or Donald Trump. Can't have both. So figure it out. Try and find a way to deal with that problem. Okay. Just thought I'd mention that. Number of other issues that we could be touching on. By the way, another of the things that my monitoring of the numbers takes me to, I have been watching and using that thread on Twitter to trace the where we stand, the United States versus other countries in all of this. Of course, I would say, how early on in the pandemic would you say we all here in the United States had all concluded that like the biggest disaster going was Italy, and that they had been impacted like virtually no other country. As it turns out, there are a few countries that actually were hit harder in terms of the number of deaths per million. Belgium, for instance, and of course San Marino, but nobody counts San Marino for some reason, and I don't think that even insults San Marinans. I don't know what they call themselves, but it's in Italian, so we wouldn't understand one another anyway. But Belgium sits at something like 800 something deaths per million, far and away the largest of even the small countries in Europe. Now they are, I think, maybe did I say last night they were just surpassed actually in all of this by, I'll scroll back and find it. I think Chile blew by them in last night's numbers, but anyway, Italy, we've all known for a long time, was like really, really heavily impacted, and their death rate was outrageous. And then, of course, Sweden adopted its weird hybrid approach to things, and they started seeing a huge spike in their deaths. And I think everybody had concluded that the Swedish experiment had kind of flopped by, I don't know, May or so. Well, anyway, one of the things you can do with all of these numbers is trace back to the time when we had all concluded that the death rate told us that Sweden was a flop. We have that death rate now. We have more than that death rate now. We have the death rate that Sweden was experiencing in mid to late June at this point. And as for Italy, the initial disaster, we certainly knew by May that they had been crushed by the virus, and we now are running Italy numbers, normalized by population. The number of deaths per million that Italy was posting by May, we are posting now, and we still see the president doing idiotic crap like this, having a super spreader event on the lawn of the White House and saying, and I ought to be reelected based on this. So I don't know what to tell you. The MAGA crowd is crazy. And as I say repeatedly on Twitter and repeat enough times here too, history will demand to know why we didn't just hang Trump. I mean, he's just out there murdering people left and right. But he told you, like we said, you believe him when he says it. I could shoot people on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose voters. Well, now he's killing the voters. He lost Herman Cain's vote. There is that. And as I reminded everybody, it was 40 days, I think exactly, from his attendance at the Tulsa rally to the announcement of his death. 40 days, in case you're wondering how long does it take, to actually get your results from this. When will we know what happened, who died from the White House event, if anything happens? And they didn't test anybody, apparently, so it's entirely possible that this could happen. And the answer is October 6th. I didn't want people to have to waste the time that I wasted counting on the calendar. 40 days from yesterday's speech on the South Lawn at the White House is October 6th. Mark it on your calendars. If you were there, get your affairs in order. Tie up any loose ends. If you don't have a will, you don't want to die intestate, make sure you get that done. Settle your affairs if you have estranged family members that you need to contact and make up for lost time. 39 days left to you now, I guess, if we're just counting days as blocks like that. But, let's say 39 and a half days. I don't want to depress you too much. October 6th, you're dead. Some people will take longer. Your results, your mileage may vary based on that. But I want to note for the record, I did get well actually'd on that earlier today. I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding. And I had just tweeted out, okay, so Herman Cain took 40 days from attending the Tulsa rally to being dead. And in case you're wondering, October 6th is the answer. The unspoken question is, wow, how long, what day is 40 days from tonight's speech at the White House lawn? Answer, October 6th. I got a well actually. And actually, it was July 30th or whatever. I don't remember the response now. And with a link, though, to the article announcing that Herman Cain had died. And I was like, you thought I was saying October 6th was when Herman Cain died? Herman Cain is dead already. I mean, he's not going to die a second time on October 6th. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's when 40 days falls. I don't know. I guess she thought I was saying that October 6th was the date he died or when he went to the rally. I don't know what the hell that was supposed to be. But okay, a little misunderstanding there. We're back on track. So, okay, what's outraging me this morning? The fresh stuff is David Farenthold has a great article, and that's outraging all by itself. And the news is that for this great article about how Donald Trump is stealing all the money is that the White House now is threatening David Farenthold, that they are keeping a dossier on his fake news attacks, and frankly, they're disgusting, a disgrace to America and to journalism, and they're gonna fix David Farenthold. So, defeat Donald Trump at the polls before he gets a chance to do that. It's an outrage that you would ever say such a thing, but we're used to outrage by now, but we're not supposed to let it pass unmentioned. What has he been documenting? Let's see, did I pocket his stories? I know I must have. Yeah, his latest is this one, and let's read it. It's pretty interesting and detailed. Room rentals, resort fees, and furniture removal. How Trump's company charged the U.S. government more than $900,000. Wow. Okay. Here's how it works. Long story short, I guess, if we really want to do that, this is about him traveling to his own properties and then billing the government. That is, when the Secret Service has to follow him and they need to stay at Mar-a-Lago if he's at Mar-a-Lago, or the Trump golf course in Bedminster when he's there, wherever there are rooms to rent, he makes them do it. And of course, right, they also rope in Pence going to Ireland, and he made Pence stay at the Trump resort on the other side of Ireland, the other coast from where the business that he was attending to was. And then, of course, Trump's own visit to the Scotland resort. All of this required rooms to be rented for the Secret Service, and a couple of other ways to siphon off money, too. So Farenthold is joined on the byline by Josh Dawsey and Joshua Partlow on this one. We'll give it a quick read so you get the details. The Secret Service had asked for a room close to the president, but Mar-a-Lago, this is a great trick. Mar-a-Lago said it was too late. The room was booked. Now, I imagine that when a legitimate real president goes someplace and they stay at the presidential suite in the hotel, right? And the Secret Service says, well, we need these rooms to guard the president of the United States. And if the Marriott or the Hilton or whatever, the Four Seasons, who knows, gets that call and looks on the computer system and finds that, yes, actually the room that you say you need is booked that day. I imagine they say, and if they don't say, they probably get, a response from the Secret Service. Yeah, well, no, it isn't. Not anymore. It's not. We're the Secret Service. Get that person out of the room. And they probably, they call the client and say, I'm sorry, we'll accommodate you. Maybe we'll give you some vouchers for even a free stay later on. But the Secret Service tells us the president's coming at that point. And I'm sure that would be very exciting for you in another room, but the Secret Service is commandeering this room. I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't do that. I have no idea. But anyway, Mar-a-Lago, the president owns that. They probably can finagle this. And Trump is used to ripping people off anyway, so why not boot them from the room? Two possible explanations for that before we even get into the story. One, I don't want to upset the paying customers. They're my lifeline. They line my pockets all the time. I love them, and I don't care about bureaucrats. But he does care about getting his own ass protected. I'm pretty sure about that. So the other possibility is there was nobody in that room, and there's not even, the room was available. But they told them, or they figured out by themselves, tell the Secret Service that they can't have the room they want, but there is another room that's perfectly good for guarding the president. It's just, I'm sorry, it's a little more expensive. And that's what happened. I mean, I don't know that there was really nobody in that room, but that's my guess anyway. So the Secret Service asked for a room close to the president. Mar-a-Lago said, too late, the room's booked. Would agents like a room across the street from the president instead? And I don't even know if that's even remotely acceptable. But that then goes on to, I do have a beach cabana available. Wow, that sounds expensive. That's what a staff member at Trump's Palm Beach, Florida resort wrote in March 2017 to a Secret Service agent seeking rooms for the upcoming weekend. Across the street at the beach club, north end of the pool. The next time, this is where it starts to get juicy, the Secret Service didn't take the same risk. They're planners at the Secret Service. It paid Mar-a-Lago to book rooms for 2 weeks at a time, locking them up before the club could rent them to others, according to newly released records and emails. For Trump's club, it appeared saying no to the Secret Service had made the Secret Service, a better customer. The agency was paying for rooms on nights when Trump wasn't even visiting, to be ready just in case Trump decided to go, one former Trump administration official said. This is really pretty amazing. Anyway, Trump has now visited his own properties 271 times as president, according to the Washington Post tally, including his visit Thursday, last night, when he met with Republican donors at his D.C. hotel. Through these trips, Trump has brought the Trump Organization a stream of private revenue from federal agencies and Republican campaign groups. Federal spending shows, the records show that taxpayers have paid Trump's businesses more than $900,000 since he took office. At least $570,000 came as a result of the president's travel, according to a Post analysis. Now, new federal spending documents obtained by the Post via a public records lawsuit give more detail about how the Trump Organization charged the Secret Service, kind of a captive customer, required as they are to follow Trump everywhere. In addition to the rentals at Mar-a-Lago, the documents show that the Trump Organization charged daily, quote, resort fees, because they were just lounging there, to Secret Service agents guarding Vice President Pence in Las Vegas. And in another instance, asked agents to pay a $1,300 furniture removal charge during a presidential visit to a Trump resort in Scotland. That must be some expensive furniture that they moved. How they did it, I have no idea. They brought in a C-130 to fly it to, I don't know, $1,300 to move furniture. In addition, campaign finance records have provided new details about the payments the Trump Organization received from GOP groups as a result of the 37 instances in which Trump headlined a political event at one of his properties. Those visits have brought the company at least $3.8 million in fees, according to a Post analysis of campaign spending records. Since taking office, Trump has taken other actions that have shattered his early promise. Do you even remember they made this promise? It was worthless, but he made it. Promise to, quote, completely isolate himself from the Trump Organization. He tried to award the massive Group of Seven summit to his Doral resort in Miami, dropping the idea after a public backlash. He filmed video messages for big spending private clients at Mar-a-Lago. He suggested, and wait till you hear how he did it too. He suggested that Pence visit a Trump property in Ireland, according to the vice president's chief of staff. Pence then shuttled back and forth across Ireland at U.S. taxpayer expense, of course, to do government business on one coast and stay at Trump's hotel on the other. But the most frequent way Trump is known to have helped his properties has been just to visit them, with the vast, big-spending presidential entourage in tow. One would think that if he was trying to completely isolate himself from the businesses, he wouldn't talk about his business, he wouldn't promote his businesses, and he wouldn't go to his businesses, said Noah Bookbinder, executive director of the watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Instead, Bookbinder said, his businesses have been a constant presence in his presidency. Now, the idea that he was going to isolate himself completely, it's been quite the opposite. The Trump Organization provided a statement saying that it has complied with promises it made before Trump took office. The company said it has rejected all new foreign deals, I don't think that's true, and donated any profits, I also don't think this is true, from doing business with foreign governments. Over the past 3.5 years, we've gone to tremendous lengths to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest, not due to any legal requirement, but because of the respect we have towards the office of the presidency. Eric Trump, you know who he is, said in a statement. Eric did not directly address questions about the Trump Organization's charges to the U.S. government. President Trump chose to keep his ownership of his businesses while in office. He could. The president is largely exempt from government conflict of interest rules, but still, to address worries about distraction and the appearance of the conflict of interest, Trump made two sets of promises. One set governed the Trump Organization to keep Trump's business away from his presidency. The company, now led ostensibly by his two adult sons, said it would exclude the president from decision-making, refuse any new overseas deals, and give back any profits it made from doing business with foreign governments. That hasn't happened either, nor have the two running the business isolated themselves from government and campaign and politics either. But anyway, the other set governed Trump personally. He said he would keep his presidency far away from his business. President-elect Trump wants there to be no doubt in the minds of the American public that he is completely isolating himself from his business interests. Sherry Dillon, a Trump attorney, said at a news conference Trump called in January 2017. You recall, that was the joke press conference with all the folders full of blank papers that were supposed to be the extraordinarily complicated paperwork that he was signing to guarantee that he wouldn't commingle his official duties and his businesses. He instructed us all to take steps, all the steps realistically possible, and I guess that was none, to make it clear that he is not exploiting the office of the presidency for his personal benefit. Dillon did not respond to a request for comment for this report, of course. On the campaign trail in 2016, Trump had offered one simple way to underline his separation from his properties. He just wouldn't visit. I may never see these places again, Trump said during a rally in August of 2016, because I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to play golf. Believe me. Well, don't believe him. He's played 300 times. In response to questions for this report, White House spokesman Judd Deere said in a statement that Trump has, quote, turned over the day-to-day responsibilities of running the company, though he was not required to, and he has sacrificed billions of dollars. Why? Because of discarded deals. The deals he's not doing, which usually bankrupt him. So he's actually probably saving money by not doing any deals. Deere did not directly address questions related to the second set of promises Trump made before taking office, the promises that he would not use his presidency to help the Trump Organization. Now, then they get mad at him. The Washington Post is blatantly interfering with the business relationships of the Trump Organization, and it must stop, Deere wrote in his statement. Please be advised that we are building up a very large dossier on the many false David Fahrenthold and others' stories, as they are a disgrace to journalism and the American people. So, official business, right? The White House very frequently likes to, no matter who's the president, keep dossiers on things that are a disgrace to journalism. So, that's what they do over there. Yeah, so now they'll be retaliating against him and attacking him, which they did anyway because they just didn't like the stories. But who knows what else they'll be doing, because the theme of the second part of the show, I hope if we can get around to it, is just the many ways that the Trump administration is ramping up its targeting of political enemies. Anyway, the full amount paid by the U.S. government to Trump properties is unknown. Neither the Trump Organization nor the White House would provide a figure, and many of the records showing these transactions have not been released. To sketch out how Trump complied with his promises, the Post interviewed staff members at Trump Properties and former Trump administration officials and reviewed thousands of pages of federal spending records obtained via public records requests. Most recently, the Post received 265 pages of receipts and emails that the Secret Service released this month in response to the Post's lawsuit, and that provided new details about previously identified payments to Trump properties. These show that Trump's pledge to isolate himself did not survive his first 2 weeks in office. Very short amount of time, very short period of time, 2 weeks perhaps. On his 15th day as president, he went to Mar-a-Lago, and the end of his literal isolation also ended his financial isolation. Trump's visit brought the club a new deep-pocketed customer. On that trip, the Secret Service reserved a house, a cottage, 2 suites, and 2 hotel rooms from the club to guard the president, according to newly released documents. The Secret Service paid $10,660 for the weekend, federal records show. The Secret Service declined to comment for this article. His knee-jerk every single time was to do things at his own properties, said the former Trump administration official. He never really understood, not sure whether that's true or not, he never really understood that you couldn't do it. In his mind, he could never understand that you should do it somewhere else. Like other officials interviewed for this report, the former official spoke on condition of anonymity to describe internal matters. And then I believe there is a paragraph missing in this edit because, and I think from the context, it appears to be the reporting that Farenthold has done in the past that that Eric Trump has said when the Secret Service or other government officials have to stay at Trump resorts because business brings them to somewhere where there is one, or to the country where there is one, and they have to go to the other side of the country to stay in it. The Trump organization charges them next to nothing. They give them the hotel rooms at cost, was the claim. Essentially the cost of cleaning it, which should be, Eric Trump estimated, I recall from Farenthold's previous articles, about $50, they said. I don't know whether that's really an accurate estimate of how much it costs to clean or not, but they said about $50. And they've investigated this before. And Farenthold has been looking at it for like a year plus, and he's never, ever, ever once found anyone being charged $50 for a room or just cleaning costs for a room. Sometimes they get discounted rates, but as it turns out, the rates are discounted not so much because of the generosity of the Trump organization, but because they charge them only. The room is very expensive, and they only charge the government what? The maximum allowable by federal rules for reimbursement for a per diem rate. So that's the discount that they get. The room rate at the Trump Hotel is $500 a night, but they get it for $100 a night. Not because they're giving them a discount, but because that's all the government will pay them anyway. So that's all they charge. Isn't that nice? But it becomes obvious that that paragraph is missing because the previous paragraph ends with the claim that Trump never understood that you shouldn't stay at your own properties. And then the next paragraph begins, but the Post has found no evidence to support that assertion. The whole thing is evidence to support that assertion. Which assertion is missing? It's Eric Trump's assertion that's missing. It becomes obvious, and you'll see why when we come back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Okay, let's continue on. I said that would become obvious when we came back. The following paragraph, following the one that was missing here, but the Post has found no evidence to support that assertion, being the Eric Trump assertion. Instead, the Trump organization charged rates as high as $650 per night for rooms at Mar-a-Lago and $17,000 per month for a cottage at President Trump's club in Bedminster, New Jersey, according to previously released federal receipts and two people who have seen non-public records. You get it? Okay, so obviously that's not a disclaimer that there's no evidence of the assertion that Trump does everything he can to stay at his own properties. We're all seeing that with our own eyes. The newly obtained federal records show other instances in which the Trump organization charged the government rates far above what Eric Trump claimed. And there's an embedded video that features these receipts that details it. In early 2017, for instance, Pence visited Las Vegas to speak to a Republican Jewish coalition gathering, of course being held there because, Sheldon Adelson lives there. And I guess he didn't want to spend any money traveling anywhere. He makes the whole world come to him. So he stayed one night at the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Newly released receipts show the Secret Service was charged for how many rooms do you think the Secret Service needed to guard Mike Pence, not Donald Trump, Mike Pence for one night in Las Vegas at the Trump International Hotel, where presumably they have the best security in the world? The answer, since you won't guess, is 151 rooms. The Secret Service took 151 rooms to guard Mike Pence for one night at the Trump International Hotel at Las Vegas. Now, they got a great room rate for a normal traveler, I guess. A normal traveler would be, I guess, thrilled at having Vegas hotels, I shouldn't even say that. Vegas hotels, honestly, I mean, whatever. It's $102 per room per night. And I think on average, people would be like, well, okay. Maybe at a Trump hotel, maybe they're, the fake posh hotel rooms $100 is fine. But in Vegas, you actually should be able to get, if you're staying in a casino hotel, you get it for like $75 a night because you're going to waste money in their casino. They make money that way. But there's no casino in the Trump International Hotel. It's the only like big time, pretending to be big time hotel in Las Vegas that doesn't have one. How could the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas not have the money-making casino attached to it? Well, a couple of reasons. One, Trump actually doesn't know how to make money with casinos. So maybe it was a business decision, you might think. No casino at the Trump International Hotel because last time I ran casinos, I lost my shirt. Or really, more to the point, I lost other people's shirts for them and went bankrupt. Even when my dad sent $3 million in cash to buy casino chips at the Taj Mahal with no intention of gambling with them. That was just a straight up gift of $3 million. That was not tax free, by the way, because it was the purchase of casino chips, right? So it wasn't a gift to Donald Trump. He didn't have to. It's all right, whatever. So the company paid, I guess, income taxes on the purchase of the chips, but not him. Anyway, that's a different story. But no, the actual reason that they didn't, Trump would have tried it again because all he does is bankrupt other people, right? He's not worried about bankrupting another casino. He probably would have tried it again, probably wanted to try again, and it might even be the case that he asked to try it again. But in order to get a casino in Las Vegas, there are authorities you have to ask, and the authorities apparently are no idiots. They actually are in the casino game for money, and they said, no, Trump is too corrupt and dangerous an individual to grant a gaming license in Las Vegas, which, if if you've seen the movies about how they grant casino licenses in Las Vegas, it's quite a statement. So Trump came and he built the thing and he said, all right, well, I'll overcharge the Secret Service with it instead. And that's what he did. $102 per night. That, of course, is the maximum rate for Las Vegas at the time under normal federal per diem rules. The Secret Service agents are, in fact, allowed to exceed the limit while on protective duty. And I guess now that they know that, they will be charged more next time they are at the Las Vegas hotel. But I guess they looked it up. What's the maximum the government will pay? $102? Then that's your room rate per night. What a discount. In Las Vegas, the Trump Hotel also, though, they did figure this out. Well, that's the room rate. That's the maximum room rate. But it doesn't say that they can't be charged $29 per room in resort fees, because that's what's on the receipts. And that happened to add an additional $4,379 to the bill, for a total of $20,183. The hotel's website said the fee covered services such as coffee, shoe shines, and shuttle service to the shopping mall at Caesars Palace Casino. The Trump Organization did not say why it had charged resort fees to working Secret Service agents. They were not taking the shuttle to Caesars Palace. They were working. They might have had some coffee, but probably no shoe shines. Another extra charge: when President Trump spent 2 nights at his Turnberry Resort in Scotland in 2018, the Secret Service needed furniture removed from rooms. I want less amenities, please. And they said, okay. Well, for that, you will be charged a furniture removal fee of $1,300 plus tax. Wow. Trump's children and grandchildren also visited Trump properties repeatedly, bringing their own taxpayer-funded Secret Service details. In September of 2017, for instance, Donald Trump Jr. stayed at the Trump Hotel near the White House while in Washington to testify before a Senate committee investigating Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. Now, I don't know whether that would be a normal thing to do or not. The presidents... It's been a while since presidents had adult children in the White House who would have been called to Washington, D.C. on some business. But it occurs to me that, okay, gee whiz, I don't live in Washington, but I've been called to testify in Washington, D.C. My first thought usually is, well, where should I stay? I say, my dad lives in Washington, D.C., I'll stay with him. He's got a big house there. It's even got like famous spare bedrooms in it, the Lincoln bedroom. But maybe that had been rented out for the night, and they couldn't accommodate Don Jr. But Don Jr.'s first thought is, well, of course, I have my Secret Service detail, and there may not be enough bedrooms for all of them to stay in the White House, but wait a minute, there's always a Secret Service presence at the White House already. I wouldn't have to rent rooms for the Secret Service guys, especially if, well, maybe they're the New York crew. Where does he spend his time normally? In New York, I guess, Don Jr.? But they could stay home. Don't worry about it. The Washington field office will take care of it. I don't need to bring the protective detail because there's lots of protective details in Washington, D.C. There was no reason to have a Secret Service entourage staying overnight with him while he was in Washington, D.C., except if he instead stays at the Washington, D.C. Trump Hotel. And then the protective detail has to have rooms there. Again, why? Because there's millions of protective detail agents hanging around Washington, D.C. The answer is, well, that's his personal detail. And now they have to pay for rooms at the Washington Hotel. Isn't that amazing? He could have stayed with his dad, but I guess they don't really have a good relationship. So, no, Melania says you can't stay here. I don't know how it happened. Donald doesn't even have to blame that one on Melania. Get out of here, Don Jr. You're an idiot. Everybody hates you, including me, your dad. Okay, so he stays at the Trump Hotel near the White House while in Washington to testify before the Senate committee. His Secret Service detail reported paying the hotel $3,300 for rooms over 2 days, according to the newly released receipts. It is unclear what nightly room rate the agents were charged. The Secret Service redacted that information before releasing the receipts. Well, they don't redact it from anything else, but they redacted from this one. I don't know why. They must be embarrassed by this one. They must occur to them now. Maybe they're thinking, oh my God, why did we rent rooms for Secret Service agents in Washington, D.C.? And we flew them from New York, probably down to, oh my God, we're idiots. Well, Trump Jr. did not respond to requests for comment. Fine. The Secret Service is always there, said one former employee at the Trump Hotel in Washington. With all the visits by the president, his children, and top officials, the former employee said, it's like being in the White House. That's how I felt working there. The former employee spoke on the condition of anonymity to preserve relationships at the hotel. That was probably the best advertisement for the hotel that Donald Trump could imagine, that staying at the hotel is like being at the White House. I don't think that was an unauthorized message. It certainly, or, they may not have bothered to check with anybody, but they probably would have okayed that comment. But they would have said, say it off the record so it looks like you're spilling the beans. Another former Trump administration official said that Trump's logic for these trips was one that turned his initial promise to steer clear of his business interests on its head. As Trump saw it, the official said people didn't expect him to stay away. They expected him to visit. The president argued repeatedly that the people knew who they elected when they picked him and that his businesses were central to his image, the official said. Trump's visits as president also brought payments from Republican political groups. Before I even get into that separate issue, once again, I just want to stop and emphasize this. The people knew, they knew who they elected when they picked me, the guy who promised that I wouldn't do this. But what I really meant is they knew I was a liar when they picked me, and they expected me to lie and rob the federal government and put the money in my pocket. So it's part of my image. I got to do it. And again, just on another level, my image, that's not a consideration that you blurt out loud as president. I mean, people always have to think about that, but to express it in terms of I have an image. Well, you can talk about, well, I'll get clobbered in re-election if I steal all the money. And Trump's vision of things here is, well, I'll get clobbered in the election if I don't steal the money. People will be upset with me for not stealing the money like they know I will. They know who they elected, and they'll be disappointed if an honest person were to take this job. That's his view. Now, there's also taking money from Republican political groups, which is a little less upsetting than stealing it from the government. But Republicans don't want you to be outraged on their behalf, so maybe it's a waste of time. Anyway, the money comes from groups which have held fundraisers at his properties, which, again, is not all that interesting, except one or two of the details is a fun one. This summer, 4 such events have been held, 3 at the Bedminster Club, and another at the Trump International Hotel in Washington. So these are events often held with Trump himself as the headliner, or sometimes making a cameo. The cost of these events has not yet been released. Trump visited his D.C. hotel on Thursday to meet with donors and supporters. The hotel has been a hub of activity all week with panels and private events led by senior Trump administration officials ahead of his Republican National Convention speech. So he dispatches officials. I want you to speak to the guests who are paying inflated rates to be on hand for my super spreader event tonight. They're staying at the Trump Hotel, obviously. Why did he, we talked about this a little bit, not this aspect of it, but why would Trump give his acceptance speech from the White House South Lawn? Remember, now initially it was when everybody was saying, all right, we're doing our conventions virtually. We can't have crowds because coronavirus. Well, obviously you saw last night, that's not operative. They're not doing that, right? So that's not the answer. And then he's like, well, I got to give my speech and I want to have some crowd, right? And in all fairness, I want to do it from the White House lawn. Well, that's a violation of the Hatch Act, generally speaking. Well, the president's exempt from the Hatch Act. Well, everybody who sets up the event is not exempt from the Hatch Act. They'll all be violating it just by putting the chairs out. Well, who cares? I'll pardon them. And the Hatch Act isn't a real law anyway. We're going to do it. So he says he wants to have the event and he wants to have some kind of a crowd there because he can't stay away from crowds and he believes coronavirus is a hoax. So where is he going to have it? Oh, I'll have it at the South Lawn. It's the only place that's available to the president that, that could accommodate such a space because we can't go elsewhere because coronavirus. No, but you're not having a distanced event. You're not concerned about coronavirus. And where could Donald Trump, real estate and resort and hospitality magnate, find space to host a large event? Well, I don't know. I guess a salesman for a large event space has just rang the doorbell. We'll figure out what that's supposed to be. It's not going to interrupt the show. We've got our internal audience here available to answer the door. Anyway, what becomes obvious is not only are they not bothering with distancing at the events, but what happened is they realized, if I have the event in Charlotte, I don't make any money from that. The people who attend my speech are paying hotels in Charlotte. I don't have a hotel in Charlotte. So there's no way for me to make money out of this. So the one and only space in the entire world I can have this event is here on the South Lawn, and the only hotel you can stay in if you're coming in from out of town to watch this super spreader event is my Trump Hotel here in D.C. So it was almost guaranteed that it was going to be at one of his properties. If the White House isn't exactly one of his properties, at least there's the hotel nearby where he can overcharge people to stay and put on events and say, if you're bored waiting around for my speech at night, there's going to be events and panels and all sorts of things. They'll be talking about government and politics and yada, yada. Oh, really? Well, who will be there? What kind of events? What kind of panels? Who's going to be on it? Well, I don't know. I will order all sorts of government officials to spend their day giving those panels so that you feel like you're at the White House. We said that with all the Secret Service agents around, it's like being at the White House. Now we'll make it be like a day in the life of Donald Trump, President of the United States. You'll get briefings. I mean, that's not how I spend my day. But you'll get briefings and you'll be shuttled around and government officials will talk to you and tell you things. And then you can come over and catch coronavirus and die before you're ever able to capitalize on any of those things. Or maybe that's built into it. Well, I got 40 days left to make as much money in the stock market as possible to leave it to my kids. So, I don't know. It's a plan. Anyway, right. So they all stayed there. Trump family members, officials, and allies have spent some time in a private suite there before and after their own speeches as well. So that's another way of raking in some money, especially if they come with Secret Service details. Thursday's event was arranged by Trump Victory, a joint fundraising committee for the Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee, officials said. Trump has also used his taxpayer-funded trips to help customers that hold charity galas or wedding receptions in his business's ballrooms. The revenue he has reaped from these visits is harder to measure. Pardon me. Wedding reception bills, of course, are not subject to public records requests, but Trump's attention to these events underscores how he has discarded his promise to separate his business and his White House. And the special way in which he handles some of these things, right? I told you that we would get to this later. He sometimes can't appear at an event, but instead he makes videos. So like if you're having a wedding, a big ticket wedding at Mar-a-Lago or a charity ball at Mar-a-Lago, and he can't go because either he's actually busy as president, whatever, or he wants to golf in Bedminster that week and not in Mar-a-Lago because it's too hot, he will make a video for you. But how will he make the video? Here's a quote from one of the videos. And I presume that he might actually be telling the truth about the part about where he is when he makes the video. Here's the text of the video. I'm standing at the White House. Right over my shoulder is the Oval Office, Trump said in a video he filmed in 2019 for the Palm Beach Police Foundation. Remember them? And remember how he made that weird one-time donation that was money that he had the Trump Foundation steal from another one of his friends' foundations, and that in 2009 or so, something motivated Donald Trump to make a one-time $150,000 donation to the Palm Beach Police Foundation. And since then, he's never given them another dime. And in fact, he's insisted on them paying him. But in 2009, which is about the time when his good friend Jeffrey Epstein was still a member at Mar-a-Lago and was still trolling the pool decks there and picking up his towel girls from the locker rooms and molesting them, something happened in 2009 where it was imperative that the Palm Beach Police Foundation get a boom, quick, too. Let's make it fast, make it happen. They get a lump sum of somebody else's $150,000 and then never a dime. And not like he's a regular contributor or anything like that. Instead, he bills them. But when they come to have their gala at Mar-a-Lago, he makes special videos to welcome them when he can't get there. And where does he make them? In the White House. Same stupid Hatch Act violation that doesn't count for anything that we're talking about already for yesterday's speech. You can't do that. And, of course, if he does it in the White House, it's subject to a Presidential Records Act as well, but I'm sure there was never any formal submission of the video to the archives. But he makes a point of it. I'm leveraging the trappings of office for you and your stupid event. I'm standing at the White House. Right over my shoulder is the Oval Office, where the Russian ambassador came over the day I fired Jim Comey, and he put a listening device in there. And he didn't put that in the video, but he could have. Anyway, so what else? Right, the Palm Beach Police Foundation was having their thing. This is one of Mar-a-Lago's most loyal and lucrative charity customers. That year, permits show the foundation's event at Mar-a-Lago was supposed to attract 450 people and cost $250,000. That's money into Trump's pocket. It was an unusual thing. A sitting president taping a White House message meant only for private clients of his company. Yeah, that is unusual. So many of my friends are here with you tonight. They're in that beautiful ballroom, Trump said. Have an incredible evening. I'll be there next year. That promise, Trump kept. This January, when the Police Foundation held another gala in Mar-a-Lago's huge ballroom, Trump was there in person. So that would have been January. I wonder what he could have been paying attention to in January that would have benefited the Americans who hired him to do the job, ostensibly. He may have cheated his way into that. That might have, let's say, a benefit that could have accrued to something in the neighborhood of, I'll check my records here. But I think there are approximately now, let's get up to it here, 184,967 Americans who wish that he had been paying attention to something else in January other than, how shall I put it, let's just say it, cupping the balls of the Palm Beach Police Association as they fork over a couple $100,000 to Mar-a-Lago for the privilege of continuing to pay Donald Trump to keep his secrets for him. Isn't that amazing? Maybe he is a great deal maker after all, but I guess it's that gentle cupping that keeps them coming back time after time. Right from the White House, they're doing this. Okay, so as you heard in the recounting of the article, they are now targeting David Farenthold and others who do such a horrible job and are such a disgrace to journalism and to America, and they are keeping a dossier on them. And you start to wonder where else this is happening, not only inside the White House, but elsewhere. What sort of signals are they giving to the rest of the executive branch, police around the country, of course, who they keep excusing for shooting black people and whatnot? Well, there's a lot of these things going on. And I mentioned to you the other day, now here I got to scroll back and try and find all of this stuff. And yesterday, of course, we talked about Trump's active disinterest in having the Department of Homeland Security follow and monitor and dig into right-wing extremism. There is that. But I also, a couple days before this, told you about the public defender. We read the story of the public defender who found that in taking a case, and she had to, she was assigned the case, of a defendant who was being accused of attempted murder of a police officer. Whether that was a good charge or a bad charge, I don't think we ever really found out. But it angered the police so much that this public defender had taken this case that they issued, apparently, a fake arrest warrant for the public defender. And they tried to arrest her on it for no good reason. And, of course, she was trying to find out, well, what's the warrant for? They wouldn't tell her. They wouldn't tell any of the lawyers that were working on her behalf. And, in fact, when she called the assistant district attorneys to ask about how could this warrant be, how did you let this even happen? They said, well, we checked the system. There's no warrant for your arrest. This doesn't exist. And they wouldn't tell anybody about it. So she's ducking the cops to try and not be arrested. But the cops actually, when they contacted, you remember the story? You must. It's only a couple of days ago. They contacted the police department. What's up with this warrant? And they were just like, well, where are you? We'll serve the warrant on you there. Well, I'm at the office, the public defender's office. And I'll be at court later on today. And if you want to serve the warrant on me then, or now, you can do it. You know where to find me. And curiously, the police were not interested in serving her with a warrant in the middle of an office full of public defenders. And they were not interested in serving the warrant at the courthouse. She was going to walk right in. Now, the cops are all over the courthouse, right? Why not serve the warrant at the courthouse? I don't think we actually got to this when we were discussing it the other day. The answer, of course, is if they have a warrant for your arrest and there's not a single judge in the building who will acknowledge having signed the warrant, you're in trouble. The judges that I don't know if they faked a signature on there or what, but if you examine the warrant, you will be able to say, well, hold on a second. I'll send my friend to go ask Judge Smith, did you sign this warrant? Because it's crazy. And then when Judge Smith says, I didn't sign any warrant for your arrest, the cops will be like, bleh. So they need to arrest you elsewhere. Does everybody know what that sound effect means? That means they're embarrassed by not being able to, by being caught out lying and they're tugging at their collar. I think I may have made that one up. All right, it's a cartoon sound effect. Anyway, well, there's more to the story. As it turns out, we hadn't seen it yet, but our correspondent here has posted more. Remember, this is Foddery Fodder is the Twitter name of the person who's posting this, who says, okay, so let me finish this thing. At this point in the story, it's about 9:30 a.m. where we had left off, and I see where a break is coming up here, but we'll fill out the rest of the picture on the other side of the break, and then I got another story that goes along with it for you, and you have to know about this one too. So let's give you a little teaser before we head out for our 2-minute break. Let me finish this thing. She says, at this point in the story, it's 9:30 a.m. The assistant district attorneys call me back to tell me that since the police who attempted to execute the warrant, Agency 1, that is Police Agency 1, there are multiple police agencies doing this, won't give any information, they have called the district attorney to help it figure out what's going on, I guess. They're actually asking the district attorneys to help them figure out how can we serve this thing. Is that right? The DA places a call to the chief of another police department then that was there to execute the warrant. This is a second police agency, Agency 2. But he tells him that his officers were never at the location and they know nothing about executing a warrant this morning. Not only was the warrant fake, but it might have been people were impersonating a different police agency to try and execute this thing to throw people off the scent. I'm confused and anxious to get the rest of this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Roots Radio. As I indicated, I haven't actually read all the way through this additional thread yet, so I'm learning it as you're learning it, although I'm learning it 15 seconds before those of you listening live and hours before those of you who will learn it on podcast. I'm just that special. Okay, well, let's see. As we said, the DA now places a call to the chief of another police department that was there to execute the warrant. But this other department says his officers were never there and they don't know anything about executing the warrant this morning. Maybe it's a lie or maybe something weirder is going on. The DA then calls the chief of a third agency, Agency 3, and the story was the same. Never there, know nothing about the warrant. Once this information is relayed back to me with the DA's explanation that it must be all a big misunderstanding, they were looking for someone else. I immediately contact my mom. Remember that originally the cops showed up at the mom's house thinking, I don't know, that was the public defender's address. Thinking so erroneously, apparently. I immediately contact my mom for the video recorded by her Ring. Showing clear video of officers from all three agencies present at my mother's house that morning attempting to execute a warrant, giving my name. So, okay, that's a good reason for the federalized so-called law enforcement officers who are harassing people in cities around the country to remove all the insignias indicating what agencies they're from, right? You've got to lie, you got to hide this stuff. The ADA, Assistant District Attorney, working opposite on the case, the one that's actually prosecuting the attempted murder case in question, calls me back. At this point, he's the only one still trying to find answers for me, and he's prosecuting the case. He's on the other side. He tells me that the officer he spoke to at Agency 1 made a remark about the ADA being unable to, quote, save me because it's outside his jurisdiction. This is where it gets complicated. Though he still was unable to find out what the warrant is for, he was able to find out that the warrant was issued in a much, much smaller county outside the jurisdiction of the DA's office. At this point, the ADA working the case in question joins me in my suspicions that whatever is going on is retaliation and a direct attempt to threaten or pressure me into not providing a defense to my client. My boss gets involved and calls the chief of the police department, the alleged victim in my case. Did your officer really try to have defense counsel arrested this morning? The chief's response was just, let me call him, but he worked last night, so he won't be in until later. Well, he never called my boss back, and he didn't answer my boss's phone calls for the remainder of the day. In the meantime, Now that we know where the warrant was issued, my boss starts calling the mayor, the chief of police, the magistrate, because it was issued in a small county. So there's no courthouse, no judge, no DA's office, only a magistrate. And that's not the case everywhere. And I guess in rural counties, you may know about that. But if you think every county has got that kind of infrastructure because you have to in order to be an organized county, well, you don't. And a magistrate, different from dealing with the regular open court procedure for the issuance of warrants. And there might be some description of that in here, but maybe not. Okay, so the magistrate, because it was issued in a small county, no courthouse, no judge, no DA's office, just the magistrate, no one would answer the phone calls from the boss, right? So from around 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m., everything just stopped. No information came in. The cops didn't show up to arrest me. I thought she was supposed to be at the courthouse at 2 p.m., but maybe that was postponed under the circumstances. Despite knowing where I am, they don't show up to arrest her, right? Even though the hysteria stopped around me, it wasn't over for me. If I went home, I knew I would be arrested. I was worried about my mother. She was so worried she had to go home and take a nerve pill, it says. She was petrified that while in jail, something would happen to me, and she would never be able to find out how. I was worried about my dog. I didn't want the police coming to my house. He would be so scared, and I was worried something would happen to him. You know, cops love shooting dogs. But I was enraged for me, livid, seething, ready to fight. My boss finally got through to the magistrate, who acknowledged that he had seen the warrant and signed it, but wouldn't give any other information, but did verify its existence. So my boss asked him to hold the warrant until the next magistrate court date so that I could go in and all of this could be figured out in his court. The magistrate said he did not have the authority to do that. Of course, he did have the authority to do that. All of this effort, all of these resources, all of these officers and agencies and determination to have me in custody told me one thing. I was onto something. It all clicked. Just days prior to the officers' show of force at my mother's house, I had a preliminary exam scheduled in the case where I represented a man accused of attempted murder. You know the case. The alleged victim, a cop, was subpoenaed to appear. Well, he was late, but the investigating agency was present. The ADA called the officer who said he was on his way, just running late. The judge demanded that we begin the preliminary examination. Though I objected, I was forced to proceed with some evidence I uncovered of police corruption. I won't go into it here for obvious reasons, but the minute my investigator started testifying to the evidence, the lead detective got on her phone and began to furiously text. I objected, but the judge ignored it and just demanded the witness proceed. Lo and behold, the officer who was on his way to testify at the preliminary exam never showed up and stopped answering his phone. 2 days later, cops are at my mom's house attempting to execute a warrant. So at this point, the word is that the warrant actually exists, though no one knows what it's for. The vibe changes from trying to help me fight corruption to, what did you do? I racked my brain to figure out the last time I was in this small county, almost a decade ago. That doesn't sound good, does it? My office contacts a contract public defender whose house was raided, dog shot, tased, and arrested in retaliation for representing a man accused of murdering an officer. He is going to represent me. So this has happened before, apparently, and the public defender to whom it happened has agreed to represent this public defender. I don't know whether the other person is still a public defender or not. Small detour. His altercation with police happened in a neighboring small county, and he inevitably won a large lawsuit against that county. I mean, the system works is what she's trying to tell you, but it takes years to do it. You'll get some money later on, but in the meantime, who knows what could happen to you? And maybe the money goes to your estate if things go really sideways. So, by 6 p.m., I'm still at the office. I've buried myself in the case this is all arising out of, because now I know there's something to be found. But also scared to drive and to be stopped alone. Scared to be home, so avoiding those realities as well. The attorney who was representing me finally calls my cell to tell me he talked to the magistrate and he has agreed to hold execution of the warrant until Thursday, my new magistrate court date. I had a few days to wait until my court date, and during this time I still knew nothing about the warrant other than the county it came from. The day seemed to drag on as I inwardly raged, which was only exacerbated by every person in a position of power that I came in contact with regularly avoiding the subject. People who should have condemned such a brazen misuse of resources and abuse of authority said nothing. I wonder who she's talking about here. Finally, my court date came. I walked in the magistrate court. For all who are unaware, in this very small town, the court is just a small room attached to the police station where they handle generally traffic matters, and the biggest penalty is a driver's license suspension. That's what goes on in these places. All right, so people aren't represented by defense counsel usually in these settings. There isn't a court reporter or recording at all of what occurred or what's said. There's just the magistrate who works, essentially as a judge. This is interesting. There's just the magistrate judge who, by the way, is also an assistant district attorney in another county. It's a part-time gig, magistrate judge. So an ADA in a neighboring county, magistrate judge in this little county, and also in the room are local police. The police chief of that small town sits next to the magistrate, acting as ADA, having the approve every reduction, having to approve every reduction or fines given or anything else done. So listen to the way this is set up, right? The magistrate judge has not a code judge, but instead of an actual ADA, assistant district attorney, in this tiny little county, the chief of police, not a lawyer, but chief of police acts as prosecuting attorney, essentially. Because the magistrate probably knows less about normally, even if things are going well, the situation that arose that led to the arrest or fine, he has to depend on somebody to tell him what was going on, and it turns out it's the chief of police. The police can give you a ticket or arrest you for something, and they prosecute the case too, even though they're not lawyers. And they just tell the magistrate judge, if the magistrate wants to reduce a fine or not sentence someone to jail or whatever, the chief of police, I guess, has some sort of sway over the magistrate and has virtual veto power on it. How interesting. The police chief of that small town sits next to the magistrate, right, approving every reduction of fine or given or anything else done. So by having the warrant issued in this small town, they were able to bypass everyone and be completely in control of, quote-unquote, justice. Who signs warrants? Judges. You don't have judges, we've got a magistrate. Magistrate has to sign the warrant in order for it to be effective. It has to, and in order to get the warrant signed, somebody has to swear to the magistrate that there was some crime and that they have evidence of it. And the chief of police does that. So, and that's not out of keeping with what might have happened in a larger county. A chief of police could certainly swear out the complaint, or any police officer swear out a complaint to a judge, and the judge would probably say, all right, sounds good. I assume you're not lying. You're giving this under oath and under penalty of perjury, even though I'll never sentence anybody for it. So fine, execute the warrant. But by moving it out to this little county, they keep an even tighter circle, and they don't rope in any district attorney who might object and say, I'm an officer of the court and I take it fairly seriously. I'm not going to prosecute a case that's just garbage. So cut out the middleman. Let the chief of police prosecute the garbage. So my attorney looked at me and said, this is going to be a real S show. So those are the facts. They stated the warrant required that I be held without bond for a minimum of 14 days. Remember, she says she hasn't been in this jurisdiction in over a decade. Something happened, or they think something happened. They think she's the perpetrator, and they get a warrant that requires that I be held without bond for a minimum of 14 days. I didn't even know that was things that they usually included in warrants, but I don't, practice any kind of law, much less criminal law. But when my attorney asked to see the warrant, they couldn't find my file. They sent the police secretary to go try to find said file while we waited. It feels like the sort of thing you should have in court, don't you think? While we waited, the police, and think about that, by the way, right? Well, okay, so what's the charge? I don't know, but whatever it is, you are required. The warrant says you're required to be held without bond for a minimum of 14 days. What? Really? Let me see. Where does it say that? I don't have it. What? So you just remember that, remember reading it. And it definitely said, I don't remember what it said you were under arrest for, but it definitely said you had to be held without bond for a minimum of 14 days. Really? Can I see it now? Well, I don't know where it is. It's lost. Can you imagine that the magistrate is sitting down for this? Like, wait a second. Even I think you have to have the paperwork for all this, right? Paperwork. Man, Trumpsters and paperwork. All right. So, while we waited, the police chief told my attorney that he was going through old files and executing old warrants. My attorney asked, why now? And the chief said, she's just the first one I came across. It was a total accident. The first warrant, I said, let me take care of some old warrants. First one that came up was from 10 years ago, apparently. I don't know. When they came back with the file, he opened it, and the first page across the entire page, it said, no charge, bolded and highlighted. My attorney pointed it out, and the chief just said, the magistrate says, y'all can go. That's it. That's the court appearance. Oh, yeah. I don't remember what it was, but you totally had a thing on it that said you had to go to jail for 14 days and nobody could talk to you and you wouldn't be allowed out on bond. Let me see it. I don't know where it is. Well, we'll wait. Okay, I found it. Well, what's this? It says no charge. So what's up? Why are you trying to arrest me? We're not trying to arrest you. You can go. That's it. That's it. The attorney was unable to see the alleged warrant at this court date, so we just took our win, and I was walking out of there that day, and I guess that's good, but I would be walking out like, I'm suspicious. How often are they going to try to revive this thing? I hadn't been in this county for a decade. Oh, I was just going through old warrants. Yeah, I totally was doing. I mean, imagine though. Does that mean that somebody was like, I hate this attorney. We got to find, if we can't get a warrant on her, that's too crazy to just fake a warrant. Can we dig up, was there ever an old warrant for her arrest anywhere ever? And you got to like go through the records of every county nearby until you find a small tiny county, which who knows if they're even computerized, right? We found a 10-plus-year-old warrant that has unfortunately written all over it, this is BS, there's no charge, it's been dismissed. Can we use that? I guess so. But what are we going to do when they say, can I see the warrant? And it says no charge on it. Well, don't show her the warrant. Well, but we can't do that. Says who? Well, everybody knows from television that you can't just arrest people when they say, show me the warrant, you got to show them the warrant. Don't. Wow. So that's it. How much longer does this go on? Let's see. So I left with a lot more unanswered questions than I came with, honestly. Tampering with evidence, hiding evidence, manipulation of evidence for their purposes. It's just the way it is with police. But I fought for the contents of my file, and this is what I found out. The warrant was a bench warrant allegedly issued in 2012. It's not a decade, but still a while ago, for failure to appear at a court date. Now, I was never served or issued a summons with the court date that I allegedly failed to appear. The file itself says no service. The court date was recorded as happening on a Sunday. In 2012, court dates do not occur on Sunday here. Most importantly, there was no underlying charge that would have given me a court date at all. How did I enter the system? I've been a wreck, and gotten a I have been in Iraq. She's also been in Iraq and gotten a traffic ticket since 2012. An officer would have seen my outstanding bench warrant and arrested me. It says I have been in Iraq and gotten a traffic ticket since then. So that means when they stop you, the officer would have seen an outstanding bench warrant and arrested me, but it never happened. Nor was I ever told that I had one. So, a cop could exercise, I suppose, some discretion in not arresting you, but they'd probably say, you don't have an outstanding warrant for your arrest? But no one has ever said anything, which indicates that maybe she didn't really have it. Bench warrants, even from other counties, are in a nationwide database. Yet the ADAs could not find an active bench warrant for me. I also passed character and fitness for the bar, a notoriously grueling accounting of every ticket you've ever received. Other interesting facts. The police chief going through executing old warrants has the manpower of about 3 to 4 officers available. They also do not have jurisdiction outside their small county. As such, they rely on larger forces to execute warrants. They forwarded them to larger agencies to have them executed. This would have been the one time they did not follow normal protocol. There is no record of them ever forwarding this warrant, so-called warrant, to the larger agency in 2012 or thereafter for execution. But somehow this is the first one they come across, and let's look at old warrants. Not discounting that they fought so hard for something to exist then willingly, and without any fight acquiesced to it not existing once we saw the file, it's clear they knew it didn't exist all along, which is why they wouldn't give any information. The goal was just to have me in custody for as long as they could until things were figured out, to threaten me from further representing my client and continue on my quest to expose police corruption. There are still so many questions about the alleged warrant and what lengths they went through exactly to try to get me into their custody, but I had to put that aside and continue to fight for my client, which has been a hell of a fight. He was initially charged with obstruction of justice, along with everything else, I guess, but the officer who thought of himself as a victim personally went to the ADA's office claiming it was attempted murder. So now I'm really confused about this case. The ADA told him it was not, and he couldn't charge the client with attempted murder. The cop became angry, went to the news, gave an interview subtly threatening the DA. You see, it's an election year, and blue lives have a lot of power if they say you are against them. Despite the ADA on the case telling this cop it was not, the DA required the ADA to amend the charge to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. This was almost a year ago. He is, the client, still incarcerated, but has been convicted of nothing. We were blocked from receiving any police conduct files despite what was done to me. They have refused to turn over what evidence I have been able to subpoena, requiring me to file motions to have them held in contempt, only to have them then show up at the last minute and turn over bits and pieces. The ADA, the judge, and the police are aware they do not have enough to hold this boy or convict this boy of attempted murder times 2, but continue to hold him so as not to upset the ego of a police officer. That is our justice system. Police are aware that they can manipulate prosecutors and judges to do their bidding just by withholding their support. They know the system works to their advantage, and they can do so with impunity. Their unions give them this enormous power. That's all I can say, but just know that this is not an outlier. It's an epidemic, and it gets much worse. In all of this, I was trying to navigate things I could not say, keep client confidentiality, but inform you of all the realities. I hope I did the story justice and provided you with some important context to the stories of people who have been wronged by our criminal justice system today. I think so. Now, granted, this is just one person telling a story on Twitter. We don't really know what else might be revealed from somebody else's perspective. But there is a larger narrative here about targeting. And again, this has taken us away from the Trump administration targeting people. But this is another story you need to be aware of before the weekend. And I'm not going to be able to get all the way through this one now. But this will be continuing. You may have seen it discussed on Twitter. HuffPost reporter Ryan Riley was the first one that I saw to finally write this thing up. But I definitely saw mentions of this story from our trusted friend on Twitter, Daniel, following this story as well. But this is one of the sources to which he pointed to give you the background information. Check this out. A black vice mayor in Virginia urged a police chief's firing. Now she faces charges. Now this is actually round 2. The other one also reported on by Ryan Riley of a similar event. This time, this is the follow-up to a bigger story in which a state senator in Virginia, and I think maybe even the state Senate majority leader, as a matter of fact, is now being threatened with arrest. But this is the follow-up. This is sort of all-inclusive since we're low on time. It has both stories piled in here. And it should be mentioned. Well, you'll hear about it when we read it. But this story encompasses both. Why was the vice mayor calling for a police chief's firing? She was calling for the police chief's firing because the police chief was out to trump up these charges against the state senator. And in calling the police out, the police are now trumping up charges against her. So this encompasses both stories. So you can read, there's a link back to the original story if you want to read this over the weekend. So we're not going to get through this whole thing, but you got to hear about this one. A mounting political and racial controversy stemming from the destruction of a Confederate monument in Portsmouth, Virginia, intensified this week after a white city resident brought criminal charges against the city's black vice mayor. The resident, Tommy Dubois, alleged that Vice Mayor Lisa Lucas Burke's public call for the firing of the city's police chief constituted a misdemeanor crime under an obscure city statute. Dubois appears to have gotten the idea to press charges from a Facebook group. Always the best advice there. Sheriff's deputies delivered a summons to Lucas Burke on, that's the last name, hyphenated, Lucas Burke, on Monday morning after Dubois filed the criminal case against her with a magistrate judge. Hey, amazing. In Virginia's magistrate system, citizens can bring criminal charges against other individuals by making their case to a judge, or in fact a magistrate in this case. Since a magistrate judge signed off on the complaint, Lucas Burke will have to appear in court to respond to the allegation that her political speech against Portsmouth's police chief violated the non-interference in appointments or removals provision of the city charter. This is a real stretch. That document gives Portsmouth's powerful city manager oversight over the hiring and firing of city employees. Fine, but that doesn't mean you can't say that person ought to be fired. Lucas Burke, though, is the daughter of Virginia State Senator Louise Lucas, the highest-ranking elected black female official in Virginia. A Democrat, by the way. Earlier this month, the Portsmouth Police Department circumvented the city's elected local prosecutor to bring felony charges against Senator Lucas, a local civil rights leader, and other local civil rights leaders. She is one, of course, as well. And Portsmouth's public defenders for, quote, injury to a Confederate monument that was destroyed in June. The sergeant in the department's property crimes unit who brought the felony charges previously lashed out against Lucas and the other defendants, criticizing both their actions leading up to the monument's destruction and the public criticism of the city's police chief, Angela Green, who is black. The charges against Lucas Burke are misdemeanors that wouldn't carry any jail time if she's convicted. But if found guilty, she would be forced to forfeit her position as a city council member and give up her vice mayor's post. Lucas Burke told HuffPost she was upset about the charges and believed they're bogus. She declined further comment until after she met with her attorney. There's more, of course, about the charges against Lucas Burke, but they also explain the full story about what happened with her mother, Senator Lucas. she's, as I understand it, she's not actually accused of taking part in the destruction of the monument physically. She was there at the protest against the monument, and apparently the complaint is that she warned police that they ought not to be stepping in and arresting protesters, certainly not prematurely or even at any point. That she was there to observe their conduct and behavior as a high-ranking government official. The majority, is she the majority leader, or was she the majority? I can't recall, but you got to look at the story and find out. But the highest-ranking elected black official in Virginia, and she was there to make sure that there was no nonsense going on and people weren't being shot with rubber bullets and tear gassed and pepper pelleted for nothing, for exercising their rights to protest against the presence of this monument. So they came up with charges for her, and her daughter said, well, those charges are ridiculous. You ought to be fired. You ought to be ashamed of yourself and fired for trying to execute warrants based on that. And they said, oh, well, our interpretation, or at least the citizen Dubois says, my interpretation of the law is that because the city manager does hiring and firing, you're interfering with hiring and firing by calling for firing, and you'll be charged too. So this is kind of amazing. Plus, of course, the public defender gets wrapped up in all this, just like in the story we just read. So I guess by way of verification, these things do occur, and they occur all over the country. You should definitely read this story over the weekend. Get outraged. Why not? That's a great thing to do.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Okay, so how will Justice Putnam outrage you with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Netroots Radio? Well, he'll be going over a lot of the things that we spoke about earlier but need extra attention, naturally, including all the activities at the White House yesterday and the targeting of David Farenthold, plus much, much more. You can always count on that. Next.